This story begins not in a corporate tower, but in the echoing halls of the prestigious Easton University School of Engineering, a place that pretended to value merit but often bowed to legacy. For the students here, the highest prize wasn't a degree, it was the Goldwater AI Ethics Grant, a career-making award determined by a high-stakes final project defense. Into this crucible of ambition stepped Elara Thorne. Elara was quiet, almost painfully focused. She wore the uniform of the serious coder, comfortable, unassuming, often with a subtle stain of coffee. She wasn't here for the campus politics or the lavish frat parties. She was here to build the first truly ethical, bias-free quantum learning model. Her world was defined by the elegant logic of her code. She wasn't alone. Elara had her core team, Maya, the brilliant data architect, and David, the pragmatic system engineer. They were her anchors, her firewall against the relentless social pressure. But in this elite academic system, the unofficial throne belonged to Vance Allister. Vance was the son of a major university trustee and a notorious tech CEO. He was effortlessly privileged, perpetually tanned, and treated the engineering lab like his private country club. His project was all flash and zero substance, a sleek, heavily funded marketing app. Vance commanded the room. Everyone knew that his family legacy was the real determinant of the Goldwater grant. Vance was, in this environment, untouchable. Elara just wanted to present her code, win the grant to fund her startup, and escape the university noise. Her goal was clean, elegant execution. The collision, however, was engineered by Vance. It happened during the mandatory first-round presentation in front of the dean and the sponsoring board members. Elara, her hands gripping the edges of the podium, presented her highly complex framework. Her logic was airtight, her math flawless, but her delivery, while sincere, was muted. Then, Vance raised his hand from the front row. A question for Elara and her team. Elara, I admire the academic complexity, truly, but this is the real world, not a theoretical math class. Your model is so layered, so intricate, it requires too much processing power, too much time. It has no scalability. The other students shifted uncomfortably. Maya shot a fierce look at Vance, but Elara remained focused on the board. In short, Vance continued, leaning forward with a dismissive chuckle, it's a beautiful, complicated equation that collapses the moment you try to apply it to a practical consumer base. We need solutions that can launch next month, Elara, not theoretical symphonies that only 3 people in the world understand. It's a beautiful but useless clock. A few nervous coughs broke the silence. The board members, wary of offending Vance's father, chuckled politely. Elara felt the heat rise in her cheeks. The public shame was immediate and brutal. She had been targeted and ridiculed for her intelligence. She quickly gathered her notes, nodding politely to the board, trying to ignore the smirking face of Vance. Her friends, Maya and David, started moving toward her, ready to console her. Be careful, Elara, Vance called out, loud enough for the board to hear. You might want to secure those notes. We wouldn't want you to lose them or any of your research data before the next round. Elara stopped. She didn't look at the board or her friends. She looked directly at Vance, and for the first time, her usually mild gaze hardened. Not in sadness, but in cold, calculated anger. You shouldn't have done that, Vance. Elara said, her voice low, resonating in the quiet room. Vance scoffed, utterly secure in his power. Done what, Elara? Called your project what it is? Going to run tell the dean? Elara held his gaze, an unflinching silence that was far more potent than any shouted threat. She then turned, walked straight to her team, and without a word, guided them toward the exit. But Vance's amused expression was already fading, replaced by a cold knot of dread. He had just gone from competing with a rival to threatening someone who understood a level of power he couldn't even code. The moment Alara Thorne walked out of that presentation room, the political atmosphere at Easton University's School of Engineering thickened. The other students, terrified of challenging Vance, now watched Alara with a mix of pity and fascination. They had witnessed the Golden Boy's public challenge, and now they waited for Alara to break. But Alara didn't break. She rallied her core team, Maya and David, and they returned to the high-security AI lab, their sanctuary. Vance's attack had moved beyond verbal sparring. He needed a reaction, and he was about to get dirty. The sabotage started subtly. David noticed it first, a sudden massive corruption spike in their team's deep learning dataset. Not a random error, but a targeted insertion of poisoned parameters designed to subtly skew the quantum learning model's ethical benchmarks, making the project fail silently, not visibly. He didn't delete the data, Maya observed, tracing the corrupted entries on her screen. He contaminated it. It looks like an accident, but this level of surgical data poisoning takes intent and access. He thinks he's so smart, David muttered, furiously trying to scrub the data clean. He used the network's vulnerability window, the one he complained about last week, to slide this in. But Alara was already ahead of them. She wasn't scrambling to fix it. She was documenting it. "Stop," Alara commanded, her voice firm. "Don't erase the corruption. Document the payload, the timestamp, and the server entry point. He wants us to waste time rebuilding. We won't. We'll just log his crimes." They had to relocate their primary server to a secured off-network environment. Vance's digital attacks escalated. Key files mysteriously vanished from shared drives. Anonymous posts appeared on internal university forums questioning Alara's academic integrity and accusing her of violating data security protocols, the very protocols Vance was exploiting. One evening, Alara was working alone, analyzing the malicious scripts that kept appearing. Vance, unable to tolerate her silence, finally cornered her near the high-performance computing cluster. "Still here, Thorne?" Vance sneered, his hands tucked casually in his designer jeans. "Trying to catch up on the work you lost? It's a shame when someone's ambition outweighs their competence, isn't it?" Alora closed her laptop lid slowly. Her gaze was level. "I'm catching up on the documentation, Vance. Your attacks are becoming quite predictable." "My attacks? You're delusional. You're just a desperate coder facing failure. You think a few lost files are going to save your failing project? I run this environment, Alara. I have access you can't even dream of." Alara finally gave him the coded warning, not as a threat, but as a statement of fact that he was too arrogant to understand. The problem with building a fortress on a foundation of lies is that your own access points become the most critical vulnerabilities. You see this university as a kingdom you own. I see it as a complex system of interlocking dependencies, and right now, you are generating excessive logs. Vance's smirk faltered. He didn't understand her language, but he understood the cold, unyielding resolve in her eyes. It wasn't the panic he craved. It was quiet competence, and it terrified him. "I'm warning you, Thorne," he hissed, leaning in. "Drop the project or your academic record will look like a server crash. Nobody messes with the Alistairs at Easton." Alara simply stood up, towering over him slightly in the dim, humming room. She didn't rise to the bait. "You've been warned, Vance," Alara replied, the echo of her words hanging in the chilled air. "Every action generates a log, and you've generated enough evidence for a complete system review." She walked away, leaving Vance staring at the humming servers, suddenly unsure if he was still the king or merely the unsuspecting attacker in a carefully prepared defensive architecture. He was panicking, and he was about to make his biggest mistake yet.
The escalating attacks drove Vance Allister mad. His calculated digital strikes, the poisoned datasets, the corrupted file shares had failed to elicit the public meltdown he craved from Alara Thorne. Instead, He received only calculated silence and cryptic warnings about generating logs. The failure to dominate her, combined with the whispers of his desperation among the other students, left Vance feeling exposed and furious. He needed a decisive public win. He needed Alara to submit, not just digitally, but physically and emotionally. The moment he chose was near the main engineering quad, a highly visible, busy area on campus. Alara, along with Maya and David, were packing up their project gear after a late-night lab session. Vance strode toward them, not alone, but flanked by two of his most aggressively loyal fraternity brothers, football players who served as his human security detail. This wasn't an academic discussion. It was an ambush designed for maximum intimidation. "Still moving your little project around, Thorn? Trying to find a server hidden even from your own incompetence?" Maya immediately stepped forward, placing herself between Vance and Alara. "Back off, Vance. We have the logs of your unauthorized access. We know what you've been doing." Vance laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound. "Logs? Who cares about logs, Maya? This is Easton. My father owns half the buildings you're standing in. Your project needs to be approved by the board. And guess what? My opinion matters a lot more than your pathetic little team's." He leaned closer to Alara, his voice dropping to a low, menacing hiss. The two fraternity brothers shifted their weight, making the threat explicit. "You're smart, Alara. Too smart to fail so badly. Drop the AI ethics project. End this competition now, or I will make sure you not only lose the grant, you lose the credibility to ever work in this field again. Do you understand? This is where your system collapses." Alara didn't flinch. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the fear that she might actually succeed. David and Maya tensed, ready to intervene, but Alara held up a hand to stop them. She looked directly at Vance, and the subtle, cold rage from segment 1 was now pure, controlled steel. She didn't beg, she didn't argue, she just lifted her hand, holding up her simple, unremarkable phone. She didn't dial, she didn't speak, she simply pressed a single button on the screen, the digital equivalent of a silent alarm, a command sent into the highest level of the university's operating system. Vance watched the action and scoffed. "Did you just call campus security pathetic?" But the scoff died in his throat. A deep, powerful engine note began to roll across the quad, growing in intensity. Around the corner, a vehicle appeared, not a campus patrol car, but a custom black electric sedan, the kind of vehicle usually reserved for visiting dignitaries. Silent, but unmistakably powerful. It was the only vehicle on campus with direct access to the restricted inner circle. It was the academic sentinel. It pulled up directly to the curb beside them, its sheer presence demanding attention. The tinted driver's window slid down, slowly, silently, and there she was. She was older, mid-50s, impeccably dressed, with eyes that assessed the scene instantly. This was Anya Sharma, the dean of the School of Engineering. She hadn't attended a public student event in months, yet here she was. She was known as the true academic architect of the entire university's modern curriculum. Anya Sharma didn't look at Vance. Her gaze was locked entirely on Alara. She nodded once, a sharp professional movement. "Alara, I need you and your team in my office. We have an immediate review of the integrity logs for the Goldwater grant servers, and I want your analysis now." Alara nodded back, her expression now showing a subtle, triumphant satisfaction. "Right away, Dean Sharma." Vance Alastor was paralyzed. His fraternity brothers suddenly looked like uncomfortable little boys. Vance tried to recover, trying to address the dean with his usual charm. "Dean Sharma, ma'am, I was just—" Anya cut him off, her gaze finally sweeping over him, a look of profound disappointment. "Vance Alastor,
The integrity of this institution runs deeper than the money your family contributes. Your tenure here is measured by the quality of your research, not the quantity of your intimidation. You are dismissed. Your final defense slot has been temporarily suspended pending a complete system audit of your recent activity. Ilara, Maya, and David walked past Vance and his stunned entourage, their gear held high. Ilara opened the back door of the dean's car. The moment the door closed, the academic sentinel accelerated instantly and silently, pulling away from the curb. Vance was left standing alone in the quad, exposed, publicly humiliated, and facing the terrifying certainty that his actions hadn't just been logged, they had been noticed by the highest authority. He hadn't been threatening an intern, he was openly attacking the protege of the Dean of Engineering, and the Dean had just initiated the final system audit that would expose every one of his crimes.
Following the dramatic intervention by Dean Sharma, Vance Alistar felt the walls of his privileged kingdom collapsing. The system audit was a polite term for a full investigation, and Vance knew his unauthorized access logs would spell expulsion. He couldn't stop the internal process, but he could take one last catastrophic swipe at the source of his downfall, Ilara Thorne. Vance was suspended from the engineering labs, a temporary measure that felt like a permanent death sentence. His desperation was palpable. He couldn't let the quiet scholar who dared to challenge him walk away with the Goldwater grant. He retreated to his off-campus apartment, channeling his rage into one final, massive digital strike. His target? Ilara's live demo server for the final thesis defense. Vance spent 48 hours crafting a zero-day exploit, a viral payload designed not just to crash Ilara's demo, but to wipe her core thesis files and broadcast a virus across the university network, framing her for a major security breach. It was a scorched earth plan, an act of pure professional nihilism. Meanwhile, in a secure, off-network server room deep beneath the oldest building on campus, Ilara, Maya, and David were finalizing their preparations. Their real work, the fully functional, bias-free quantum learning model, was isolated and complete. What remained was the elaborate stagecraft required for the final defense. It was Maya who first caught the signature of Vance's final assault, a sophisticated multi-vector attack package scanning the edges of their demo environment. "It's Vance," Maya said, pointing to the code streaming across her screen. "He's using a proxy server, but the signature matches the poison data packets from Segment 2. This isn't a probe, this is the kill shot. He's going to crash the demo and corrupt the thesis files." David tensed. "We can build a counter firewall now, Ilara. Block the port, cut the connection, or shunt the traffic to a sinkhole. We still have time." Ilara looked at the pulsing, malevolent script on the screen. She didn't show a hint of panic. Her hands were steady, holding a mug of tea, the epitome of calm. "No." Ilara replied, the single word silencing the room. "We don't stop him. We let him in." Maya and David exchanged shocked glances. This was the moment of highest risk. If they failed, Ilara would lose everything. "But the thesis file, it's the only copy publicly registered for the defense," David protested. "The copy on that server is a decoy. It's a perfect copy of the real thesis sitting on a server we designed specifically to be vulnerable. It's the bait." She pointed to a separate, smaller terminal running a minimal logging script. "We need him to destroy the presentation to win the narrative. We need him to destroy it to win the case. We are going to give him maximum access to the decoy. That logging script will capture the precise moment of file deletion, the exact payload of the virus, and critically, the final, undeniable point of origin of the malicious script." This was her calculated move,
allowing the enemy to breach the perimeter to gather the irrefutable evidence. It required absolute trust in her code and absolute trust in her friends. Maya, recognizing the brilliant, brutal logic of the maneuver, leaned over and began typing. She adjusted the decoy server's security settings, welcoming the incoming attack. "We're opening the door, Ilara, but the clock is ticking. This logging script has to run clean until the attack commits." "It will," Ilara assured her. Vance is operating on pure emotional reaction now. He won't check the system integrity, he'll just revel in the crash. He believes he's destroying my work, but he is actually compiling the evidence for his own expulsion. They worked in a calculated silence, the three of them, Ilara, the architect, Maya, the data expert, and David, the engineer, moving with the flawless precision of a synchronized machine. As the final countdown to the Goldwater defense began, Vance's attack hit the decoy server. Files were deleted instantly, and the system began to broadcast error codes. But Ilara simply watched the separate logging script. The tiny terminal screen confirmed the payload, the target, and the identity of the attacker. She had the smoking gun. She stood up, pulling on a blazer over her hoodie, ready to face the final auditorium. The battle was no longer about code, it was narrative control. "Showtime," Ilara announced, her voice calm and absolute. "Let's deliver the system failure Vance built for himself." The moment of truth arrived, the final defense for the Goldwater AI ethics grant. The auditorium was packed, not just with students and professors, but with Dean Anya Sharma, the university chancellor, and the full sponsoring board, including Vance's father, sitting in the front row, radiating confidence. Vance Alistair was present, having been unsuspended for the defense, though he was now pale, nervous, and sitting off to the side, his final project presentation having been indefinitely audited. Ilara Thorne took the stage with Maya and David standing by. She wore a simple, dark suit that contrasted sharply with the extravagant presentation set up behind her. Ilara began by introducing the philosophy behind her bias-free quantum learning model. Her delivery was confident, passionate, and deeply intellectual. She spoke about accountability, integrity, and the ethical responsibility of the academic community, words that were aimed squarely at the people in the room, but most importantly, at Vance. She reached the demonstration phase, the moment Vance had been waiting for. "Now, we must prove the resilience of the system," Ilara announced, her voice echoing in the silent room. "The greatest threat to ethical AI is not flaws in the code, but flaws in the integrity of the people who operate it." She connected her presentation laptop to the main auditorium projector, which was linked to the university's demo network. "We will now run the final compilation sequence for the quantum model," Ilara said. She pressed the execute button. Immediately, the massive screen behind her flashed red. An aggressive cascade of system failure messages erupted, showing unauthorized process termination, critical file deletion, and a clear, viral security breach spreading from the demo server. The auditorium dissolved in shocked whispers. Vance Alistair, watching from the side, allowed a small, desperate smile to creep onto his face. She failed. He won. His father looked momentarily annoyed, but ultimately relieved. Ilara, however, did not flinch. She simply waited for the noise to subside, then turned to the board with a look of calm, calculated command. "As you can see," Ilara stated, her voice perfectly steady, "the system has registered an immediate and total failure." She walked to the terminal and typed a single simple command, cat/log/intrusionreport.txt. The red error messages vanished, replaced by a file detailing a multi-stage zero-day attack with complete forensic metadata. This malicious script, designed to wipe my thesis files and compromise the university network, was injected precisely 20 minutes ago. It was designed to cause this exact public crash during my defense. She zoomed in on the final lines of the log, projecting the raw, irrefutable data for the entire auditorium to see. The lines clearly showed the proxy server connection, and following the protocol she'd set up, the originating user ID and the physical off-campus apartment IP address belonging to Vance. The silence in the room was absolute, thick with stunned realization. Vance's father shot up from his seat, shouting, "This is absurd! This is a manufactured lie!" Alara cut him off, her voice gaining the authority of undeniable truth. "No, sir. This is the irrefutable log file recorded by the decoy server, which we intentionally left vulnerable in order to capture the evidence that your son has been actively trying to sabotage academic research for the past 3 weeks." Dean Sharma rose slowly, her eyes fixed on the chancellor. Alara delivered the final blow. The real project, the fully functional, bias-free quantum learning model, was never on the vulnerable network. It has been running securely on an isolated external environment since the first attack. David wheeled a small secured pedestal onto the stage, holding Alara's external server. She plugged it in, hit the compile sequence, and the screen instantly filled with elegant real-time data demonstrating the flawless, bias-free operation of her model. The contrast between the deliberate chaos and the clean, secure success was shattering. The focus shifted from Alara's success to Vance's crime. Dean Sharma walked to the microphone, taking control of the scene. She didn't look at Vance or his father. She addressed the chancellor directly. "Chancellor," Dean Sharma stated, her voice cold and definitive, "Alara Thorne's presentation demonstrates exactly the integrity and resilience we require for the Goldwater grant. Vance Alastair's documented actions constitute academic fraud, unauthorized network intrusion, and severe ethical misconduct. The system audit is now complete." The chancellor, looking grimly at Vance's father, simply nodded. Vance stood up, trembling, suddenly understanding that his family name could not save him this time. He was led out of the auditorium by campus security, his reputation, his degree, and his career dreams destroyed, his exit far more humiliating than any crash of code. Alara Thorne, the quiet scholar, watched him go. She didn't gloat. She simply turned back to the audience, the true victor, ready to claim the grant and redefine the future of ethical AI.